Greetings, fellow Get-to-Laylians. Jeff Weinberger coming at you with a new tutorial. Today I'd like to talk about finger picking. There's an awful lot of finger picking patterns out there, and I do talk about this subject a lot. Favorite subject of mine, otherwise known as fingerstyle guitar playing. And I wanted to do this kind of as a revisiting of some basic things if you're new to this. This is especially for you. I will get into some more advanced things a little bit later, but let's start with the most basics of basics. And the first thing you have to know is, how does the right hand function? What do you do when you're finger picking? I want to give you a clear shot of this, so I'm going to put my guitar up so the microphone's not in the way. But basic idea is that your thumb is taking care of the low strings. When we talk about low strings, bass strings, we're talking about the E string, the A string, and the D string. So that's the first thing to understand, is what are bass strings as opposed to treble strings, which are the G, B, and E. And we're assuming standard tuning here. We're not doing drop D or C tuning or dadgad or anything like that. This is just EAD, GBE standard tuning on the guitar. All right. And so the thumb taking care of those bass strings and the fingers taking care of the higher strings, the treble strings. That's the first thing to understand. Second thing to understand is how your fingers are lettered, and we call them P-I-M-A, which is not from English, but it is from Latin, pulgar indici medio annular. And thumb, index, middle ring is what it would be in English. So P-I-M-A, that's super important to understand about fingerstyle. There's a certain posture, a certain way to hold your hand that's the correct way, that's the classically trained way. And that would be an important thing called thumb forward, fingers back. That's a very cardinal rule of fingerstyle, is thumb forward, fingers back. Now, do other people play in other ways? Of course they do. There's a million different ways to finger pick a guitar. You'll see some people with their thumb way back here, and that's okay for them. That works, you know. You'll see some people with their pinky anchored on the pick guard like that. That's okay. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I'm just teaching you the standard way, the way that most people in the world finger pick a guitar, and the way that you, if you're a beginner, you'll have the most success with. So definitely think in terms of thumb forward, fingers back. The reason for all of this is it gives your thumb a huge surface area to pluck the string with. You're not just plucking with a little tiny piece of your thumb, you're using your whole thumb. It's like a big fat bass sound. It's really nice. It can be powerful if you put some force into it. It really makes that string ring. And so there's a lot to be said for using proper technique. The fingers, well, they're coming from underneath the strings, the G, B, and E strings. And you want to use a little tiny bit of finger, the opposite of the thumb. We want to get a fat sound out of our bass notes. But we want to get a brighter sound, generally, a brighter sound out of our treble strings. And so you're using just the very tip of the finger, the very end of your fingertip. And if you have fingernails, well, use a little fingernail. That'll give you a brighter and louder sound, like a guitar pick. So the thumb forward, fingers back concept cannot be emphasized enough. That's super important. Now that you know about basically how to hold your hand, it should look, sort of like that. I do believe that it's time to start playing. So we're going to do something I call the straight down pattern. And this is the most basic of all finger picking patterns. You pluck the E string with your thumb. You pluck the G string with your index. You pluck the B string with your middle. And finally, you pluck the E string with your ring. Notice how my hand isn't moving that much. See that? It's my fingers doing all the work, the knuckles of my fingers and the joint of my thumb bending, not using the hand, not like bouncing the hand like this. You're not trying to pull the strings away from the guitar or up towards the ceiling, you're just setting them in motion. So that's really important, is to not move your hand very much and let the extension and relaxation of the joints of your fingers do all that work. So why do I call that the straight down pattern? Well, you're going straight down the strings. You're starting on the string closest to your eyes and moving away towards the floor, straight down. That's where I got the name for that pattern. You can do this on your open strings like I'm doing right now. That gives you a nice E minor chord. This particular combination of notes on a standard tuned guitar is an E minor chord. So that's a super good introduction to fingerpicking if you practice this. Don't have to go that fast either. You can go real slow. I'll roll up my sleeve here. So that's one thing you might notice if you wear a shirt and it has buttons on the sleeve. Those buttons will vibrate against the face of your guitar, and that's kind of obnoxious. So I'm gonna get rid of that. Don't need that extra bit of percussion today. So yeah, I highly suggest, if you're a beginner at fingerpicking or you just want to refine your skills, revisit your basic skills in fingerpicking, you start with something that simple. Try to go for an even sound. It doesn't necessarily have to be loud, doesn't necessarily have to be powerful. The goal more is to get an even sound. So that's really important, that these notes, even when I play them softly, they're even. And when I play them more loudly, so this one doesn't stand out over the others. Although at first, that might happen to you. You might have to back off a little bit on your thumb note. The thumb being a very strong digit and being a large digit, it's going to produce a loud sound if you're not careful. So you do want to be careful about that it's blending in with the other notes. Conversely, you don't want to have the high E string pop out too much. You don't want your ring finger to go like this. Now, I do that on purpose sometimes to emphasize that note. That's part of my playing, but in this case, we're trying not to do that. We're trying to even it out. All right, so if you're good with the straight down pattern on just an open E minor chord, let's do it on a actual fingered chord, like a C chord, for instance. X32010. A C chord.